Welcome to TCI headquarters. Football season is here, sort of, kind of, almost a few days. Game week is here. Had 2 days of interviews the last couple days. Tuesday Tiger Talk. You guys recognize this guy, Will Vandervoort. You recognize Cameron now. Will hadn't done these. I was thinking about this today. Will, I think the last time we did these together was the last time Clemson made the playoffs. So I'm just saying.
Yeah,
The last two seasons
that would have
when
been
they
2020. Yeah.
So
are you saying we're the blame?
So I'm saying it's our fault. So sorry about that, fans, but we got you back on the right road. We're going to talk about what we heard the last 2 days. Cameron was there yesterday. Will was there today. We had 6 students there different days, and I was there for both days this week as well. So ready to kick things off. Cameron, you were there for Monday, so I'm going to start with you. What's the biggest thing you heard yesterday?
I'll tell you what, obviously, you hear from Cade Klubnik and you hear from guys like him, and it's like, oh, that's going to be your headline instantly every single time. But I think the person who was the most, right in front of you, in your face, even in an interview, was Blake Miller. And he talked about, obviously, last year, he played in that Tennessee game, he played 105 snaps, which is absurd to play in a single game for an offensive player. That's over 2 weeks is a pretty big number on its own, but he did it in one game. And he was asked about that, obviously doing that as a freshman, having started all 14 games. That's a lot to ask of an 18, 19-year-old, but he was able to do it. And he's like, I'd do it again. And I think that Iron Man mentality is really important on the offensive line. And that was reflected when Garrett Riley spoke, and he talked about the continuity and the chemistry on the offensive line, which is really important for that. And then backing off when I talk about Cade Klubnik, it's really valuable for him to have all that chemistry and reliable people in front of him when he's getting used to this offense under Garrett Riley.
Blake, we could have told Blake if he'd scored a few touchdowns, he wouldn't have had as many snaps there, right? All those field goals and missed field goals. Will, Cade was refreshing. He seemed confident. He seemed calm. There's no more DJ Cade, DJ. It's just his team now. He seemed real comfortable in the press conference yesterday.
Yeah, he did. And I think there's just this. And Will Shipley kind of said it today, talking about there's just this thing about Cade that draws them, that draws them all to him. And he said there's no doubt number 2 is the leader of this team. And
which is hard for number 1 to say.
Which is hard for number 1 to say. And that really tells you something if you kind of just look to last year, because there was no doubt Will Shipley was the leader of that team, not DJ Uyunglele. Mm-hmm. And I always say it's better that your quarterback is the leader of the team. When you look at Clemson's success under Trevor Lawrence, leader of the team. Deshaun Watson, leader of the team. When Clemson's had their best years, the quarterback is the leader. Taj Boyd, leader of the team, right? So I think that's the kind of guy he is. Now, I'm not saying he's going to put the numbers those guys put up and all, but I think he's got that it factor that those 3 guys had. And I think, Will Shipley kind of pointed it out today. You saw that at the press conferences yesterday and how Cade handles himself, how he carries himself. And then, guys, talk about the beat video. What better way to get your teammates behind you and feeling good about you than that, right? I mean, give them all a thing of beats.
Yeah, but he copied somebody else that did that. It didn't work out too good.
Oh, I didn't know he copied somebody else with that.
DJ did that.
Oh, I didn't know DJ did that.
DJ did that 1 year at Clemson, and he just did that at his new home.
Did he really? Well, maybe it's a beats thing. But hey.
Yeah, it's a beats thing.
Yeah.
So, but no, that was good. That was, like you said, that gets your teammates behind you. Will Shipley, there were times last year where he put the team on his back
Absolutely.
coming out of halftime.
Yeah.
The team struggled the first half.
Syracuse game, NC State game.
And he just tried to take it all on himself. This year, he's hopefully not going to have to do that. Big thing we got yesterday as well, that we're not going to get a lot of weeks this season, and Dabo talked a little bit about that today. We'll get to that here in a minute, but we actually got both coordinators yesterday. We haven't gotten them during camp, so that was kind of good to hear Wes and Riley talk about, especially Riley with all the buzz around the new offense. What's some of the stuff you heard from the 2 coordinators yesterday that stood out to you?
I think really with Riley, we got to hear a little bit of introspection. Not too much, obviously, because he won't give us everything, but talking about preparing for this week. Obviously, he talked about how they watched a little bit of Texas A&M film. Obviously, and he spoke really highly of Mike Elko and everything they're doing over there. And another thing, going back on when y'all were talking about Cade being a leader of the team, he really emphasized how much of a film guru that Cade is now, and that is really valuable, especially with Garrett, who's that same kind of person. Obviously, you're a coordinator, you're going to watch a lot of film, but he was really emphasizing that, and that's really important. And on Goodwin's side, he's just confident. You see it in the way he handles himself in interviews now. It's his second year in the job. He's enjoying it, and he's just much more confident in his role as defensive coordinator. And Will, you had wrote about it. Obviously, he talked about how he'll be down on the field again this year. That's an emphasis for him. While Mickey Conn will be up in the box, the bird's eye view for them. So it just there's a lot of buzz around this team right now, and they're both like really excited, both of those coordinators, to get out there this year, and we'll see that Monday.
Yeah, and Will talked today about how it's going. Garrett's going to be on the field as well, and how nice that'll be. Last year with Streeter up in the box, he talked about some communication issues. Only one headset, only one person could be talking to the OC at a time. So I think having Riley down there, and Riley just seems like he's one of those energy guys, kind of like Dabo.
Yeah.
I think having that energy will be
having
infectious.
that back. Yeah, because you didn't have that last year. As good as Wes is as his mind, but Wes is not a raw guy. It's just not his personality, and that's okay. Different strokes, different folks. But it seems like Garrett is, and so Garrett's like that Brent Venables kind of. I don't know if he'll have that kind of energy where he's got to get back coach, but to have that kind of energy back on the Clemson sideline, I think is going to be very valuable for the team.
Yep. And Wes was more comfortable this year, I thought, than last year.
Yeah, he did. He did a much better job.
So, the players love Wes.
Absolutely.
You can see that. We've heard that a lot from the players. So it'll be interesting to see, how he handles year two. Today we got Coach Sweeney in the new media room, which we should probably say something about. We've had that for the first time in the spring this year, and it's awesome for this time of year. Had Dabo, we didn't have to go upstairs and then come back down, and having everything in that one nice room they have for us.
I know the TV people love it.
Thank you, Dabo, and everybody for getting us that room.
Ross Taylor.
Ross, and Ross.
Ross played a big part of that. Yeah.
So that's really, really, really nice. But we had Dabo today. Seemed very comfortable today. He talked about the media. He was asked about the media change because we've had some stuff on The Rock and some other places around the internet about how it used to be last year we got the coordinators every week, and this year we're only going to get them like once a month.
And we only got them on game, and we also got them on game days.
Yes, and we all got them on game days, which is huge, which we're not going to get this year. So Dabo basically said that he had kind of looked around and looked at what other top programs were doing and felt like he was maybe given too much access, and that's obviously takes time from the coordinators away from their other duties. Was kind of the way he phrased it. So he felt like we're still getting a lot more access than a lot of schools, but he just felt like after 10 years it was probably ready time to make a change.
Yeah, I get the.
We're gonna get Will riled up here.
I get the during the week stuff. I get the during the week stuff, and okay, that's fine. But post game, it's not taking any time from them on post game to come and talk to us for 5-6 minutes.
Man, they got to be out there working.
Like I said, it doesn't take any time to 5 or 6 minutes to talk to us. So I get what Dabo's saying during the week because it gives Wes and them more time to talk, to work. And we saw with Brent Venables, sometimes he didn't show up to them. Yep. So, and it's not so much he didn't like it as much as I knew he had.
He didn't like it.
He didn't. But he also had film to watch and stuff. And I get it. They got meetings and film, and they got to meet with their individual groups. They got to meet with the defense, and they got to meet with the team. So I get all that for during the week. But post-game, I don't get it. I think there's no reason why we shouldn't still be able to talk to the coordinators. And so that I disagree with. Not my call, obviously. I'll do what they give us, and we have to do.
What do you think?
I do. I'll do what they say we have to do because that's the rules. But as far as do I understand it for a post game, I don't really understand it for post game.
I understand part of it, but that's going to be the title, right? Does that
Yeah,
sound like your call?
yeah. Hey, look, it's Dabo's program. We got to. He can do whatever he wants to.
We're all living in it.
Yeah, that's right.
We got him. What's some of the other things that stood out that he said today, Will?
I think one of the things that really stood out to me was he's asked about the national championship stuff. And I think that was big because Dabo's always been about, hey, if we do this. And so the thing that was interesting is I believe he talked about the 2015 season. And he said he put it on him that they did because he says we accomplished every goal. And then we didn't win the national championship that year because of the special teams blunders. And he said, I put that on me as a coach, and that's something I got to do better of.
Well, he didn't say it was him because of special teams blunders.
Yeah.
He said it was his fault because he didn't have the goal. He had the goal. The last goal is win the bowl game.
That's right.
The last goal Win the last game.
Win the last game. That's correct, because they won the bowl game.
Yeah, they won the bowl game.
They won the bowl
Lost
game.
in national
That's right.
championship.
And they lost because of the special teams that cost them, and he owned talking about that. But so he changed his rules then, and the goals and how they win the last game is what they do. And so he explained all that again, which we all know that. Everybody knows that. But the fact that Dabo's talking about it again in a press conference setting, and he answers it, and he talks about how, that's the goal. They want to win the national championship. They want to get to the college football playoff. It's all out there in front. They're not being shy about it this year. So that stood out to me without a doubt.
It stood out a lot today. It stood out a lot during camp when we had a lot of the players talk about that. Xavier Thomas talked about that when I talked to him in the studio. The other thing Dabo talked about, obviously they had to change one of their goals. One of their goals used to be to win the division.
Right, can't do that anymore.
Dabo said they've replaced that with win 10 games.
Yeah, I like that.
They still have 5 goals because they're both. I was kind of wondering, okay, what happened to do we have 5 now or 4?
Well, I've always thought that he could have kept get to the conference championship game in there as that's win the division, just get to the conference championship game as a goal. But then when you think about it, maybe why he doesn't put that in there, because there's years they could go 7-1 or 8-1, and it depends on how many games the ACC turns out playing. They go 7-1, but they're tied in a 3-way tie with somebody with 7-1. So they actually could qualify for the ACC championship, but they lose in a tiebreaker. Yeah. So I think maybe that's why he went with win 10 games, because if you win 10 games, most years you're going to be sitting there playing for a conference championship.
If they end up in a bigger conference, say a Big 10, say a bigger ACC, then they might change that goal to
win the
semifinal.
win the pod.
Right?
Then win the semifinal. They have to maybe make it 6 goals.
Change the goals a little bit. But that was interesting that Dabo took that on himself. I thought that was kind of cool.
I did too, and it was good. And also real fast, I found it interesting what he said about Troy Stellato, talking about how he's come on the last week and that he's had good practices, and that he talked about how during the summer he was really doing well. Till just before camp started, he pulls up and gets a severe hamstring injury, kept him out through most of camp, pretty much all camp. And then he said last week, though, he started to get back to practice, and he did well enough where they got him a second on the depth chart right now, which says a lot. And so maybe if he stays healthy, maybe knock on Cameron's head, maybe we got a chance to see Troy Stellato in a game, and maybe he makes some plays and he's a difference maker.
A couple other injury updates. He talked yesterday about Trotter. Said his hamstring was okay. He was going to play. Don't know if he mentioned that in his video this week or not.
Mm-hmm.
Also, he talked about Trey Williams today.
Yep.
And said they're trying to work him back. And sounds like they may try to get him to play at some point this season, but be able to not have this season count. So you may get more of Trey Williams in the future. Another thing we should probably talk about, which wasn't said the last 2 days, but came out of Dabo's radio show, is there is a new redshirt rule now. The redshirt rule has changed where now you can play your 4 games. Postseason games do not count. So that means ACC championship, playoff, bowl games. So if you end up going to the national championship game, a player could actually play 4 regular season games, could play 3 postseason games, and still get the year back. That's a pretty big change. That
is a big change. And when you look at programs like Clemson and Alabama and Ohio State, Georgia, these teams that have been more than 2 times, they've been 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. When you have that kind of pedigree, and now next year they're expanding the playoffs to 12 games. So if you're playing for the national championship, and say, we'll just use Tyler Venables as a good example. Dabo says he possibly could come back this year. They'll get him later in the season. They'll use him for maybe the postseason. Well, now you can get him the first 4 games. He can play 7 games. He's playing half a season. Yeah. If you get to the national championship game, I like that, man. I mean, if you're a player, you got to love that.
Well, and I've noticed a few things like that Dabo's doing differently. Dabo's not using the transfer portal.
Right.
Other schools, NIL and all that stuff, but he is managing the roster differently. The other thing he's talked about this week was Tyler Brown is going to play, freshman receiver. Mm-hmm. He said he would like to redshirt those other receivers.
Right.
So again, if you get in a situation where there's an injury late, you could still end up playing one of those guys 7 games. But he's doing more of the redshirt thing, it seems like, which is going to, like the Venables, that's going to help him next year.
Yeah.
Trey Williams not wasting this year. It's going to help you in the future. So it's almost like he's trying to sit back and manage the roster a different way.
But I think what's really interesting about it, just on an overall, if you enjoy college football, is these coaches you obviously don't look at it as a chess game right now, but those guys you want to redshirt, let's say you have a freshman that comes on, whether let's say it's like Noble Johnson for Clemson or something, and he really improves as the season goes along, but he doesn't have any playing time early, and it takes him a second to get rolling. Let's say it's the last 4 games, and all of a sudden he's flipped the switch, and he's a sophomore mentally and physically, and you can throw him out there, and he's not going to lose a year for it.
He's a
and
guy
turn
nobody knows
into
about.
a production piece, and that goes all around the country. So that predictability that you can see in college football, where it's like, okay, here's your contenders, everybody's going to be them. Even what you can predict for those teams goes out of the window because players can come on late and just have no risk coming in and being key contributors.
And give you a perfect example of that. If Clemson fans remember, because see, nobody remembers. I only remember, T. Higgins played his freshman year. Yes, he did, but he played in that scenario. He played late in the year. You remember the last home game he came out, then he showed out against South Carolina. T. Higgins showed that promise that we were going to see those next 2 years, but he didn't play at the start of that season. They kept him along, and then they played him late because he developed. He got ready, and then he was a better player. And nobody knew who T. Higgins was at that time when he came out there. It's like, who's this number 5 guy that's killing everybody, right?
Will will know this answer. I don't know off the top of my head. I believe if they had this rule last year, Cade would be a redshirt freshman.
You are correct.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
That's correct, because he
Those
would have
postseason games.
he would have played in about 5 games, and he would have been able to redshirt. So those postseason games wouldn't have counted. The ACC championship game would not have counted.
Yep. So that's just, it changes everything. It's a big deal. All right, folks, that's a recap of what we've heard the last couple days. It was actually Wednesday, Thursday this week instead of Monday, Tuesday, but you guys get the drift. We're going to call it Tuesday Tiger Talk because that's what we do here. And we're going to get ready for a huge game. So stay tuned to the Clemson Insider. Hopefully you guys check out our new message board. We're rolling that later today. I think fans are really going to enjoy that. It's going to be a lot more mobile friendly, iPad friendly. Really looking forward. So we are actually moving all of our discussions and posting stories and all of that right after this show. Everything will start going only on the new message board. So look forward to seeing you guys there. We will all be in Durham Monday night, and a little bit later this week we'll give you guys our preview and predictions. So stay tuned to the Clemson Insider for the most complete coverage of Clemson athletics. Okay.
All right.
That one's done.
Simple, easy.
Yeah, simple, easy. Yeah, have fun with it.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, and see, that's what we do. We talk about the highlights, but we get into other stuff. And fans really like this stuff.
Yeah.
No, they do.
So we'll give them, and I'll put them all together. So now this one's a little bit easier, not as long. We just talk about key. If you guys want to get into multiple keys or whatever, that's fine. And then we'll have everybody give a score prediction.
Yep. If you want to tease me, you can. That doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well,
People
we
enjoy that.
usually
They
do
love the
more of
banter.
teasing as the season goes along. Like,
Yeah.
Cameron, man, you had us scoring 50 last week. We only scored 14. What's up?
Yeah.
So that's where.
What
we
is your
get
score
the
prediction,
fun.
just so I can...
I am going to say, I've been thinking about it. So, and I don't really think it, I think it could be defensively that I think they'll give up less. But I'm just going to do it because it makes my scoring easier because I think Clemson can get over 30 or more. So I'm going to go 30-20. So I'm like right there on the what the line is. The line's 13. I think that's disrespectful to Duke's team.
Yeah.
That it's that high. So I think Duke will come out kind of fired up. Like they're too I think Duke's going to be kind of fired up because of that.
I'm saying...
And they're a good enough team.
I'm saying 31-24.
Okay. Oh, you're saying even closer game. Yeah,
I'll go
okay.
touchdown game.
Okay. But is it Clemson in control closer?
Clemson in control.
So that's what
they
mine
score a
is.
Touchdown late, maybe needed a
Backdoor
stop.
cover.
And,
Okay, there you go.
yeah.
All right. See, that's a little
Don't
different.
get the stop at the end.
Yeah.
And it's over.
So I think the defense is actually going to hold them because they're not. There's nobody. Their tight end. I like their tight end. He's going to be an NFL prospect. But their wide receivers, there's nobody that scares you.
Yeah. No.
You know, so it reminds me skill-wise. It reminds me of Georgia Tech last year. They just don't have those big skill people. But that quarterback's really, really good.
Yeah.
That's going to be the thing. So we'll talk about that. So.
You good?
Yeah.
All right, welcome back to TCI headquarters. Our first preview prediction video of the season. We are finally here. We're going to give you some keys to the game, and then we're going to go on the record with scores. And hopefully this is going to be a lot like it used to be before the last two seasons, when the offense was
when the offense
good.
when the offense scored 40,
not
50
good.
points a game.
So I'm gonna get back in my old
Oh
pick and
boy!
steam
Oh
here.
no!
So hopefully I won't get burned like I did the last 2 years. So Cameron, I'm gonna start with you. What's the key you're looking for the game?
My key, I feel like it's been well documented, obviously, is trying to contain Riley Leonard and that offense. I mean, obviously, they know what they can do in the air, but when you have guys like Jeremiah Trotter and you've got Barrett Carter back there, I feel like their focus needs to be making sure he can't use his legs too often, because it's already a tough task for them to deal with the vertical part of that offense, but if he starts getting loose and then you've got to bring more guys into the box, it becomes a maze for them to deal with that offense. But I feel like they can do a good job of containing him. I feel like Wes Goodwin can make sure they've got all the pieces together for that, and it doesn't hurt having those two linebackers to be able to do that.
No, it does not.
I think
Crash
if-
course.
I think if they can make sure that he doesn't have too dominant of a game on the ground, then they can lock down that offense.
Yeah, and what worries me about that, though, is that Clemson does play a lot of man, especially with their corners and their safeties, and so they'll have them out. So say it's 3rd and 8, and, so you're going to – I know Wes is going to bring some kind of pressure. He's going to bring at least one of those backers. He's going to do some different things, dial up maybe a safety blitz. Worries me is if he loses containment and everybody's running downfield,
Exactly.
that guy can go. And if you don't believe me, go back and watch the Pittsburgh game with Duke last year. And Pittsburgh's a very good defensive front, and their front sevens is almost as good as Clemson's. And he killed them with his legs, and he did the same thing to Miami. So that is my concern with him, is that he can really burn you on those 3rd and long situations. You get yourself to that point where you're like 3rd and long, you got him where you want him, and then he runs 20 yards for a first down. And then you're like, that's just demoralizing if you're defense.
You know what's great though?
What's that?
XT can catch him.
I think. Well, if he's as fast as Barrett Carter said he is,
Fast.
he can catch him. So
Yeah, so we got him. We didn't have him last year.
Well, I'll tell you what, that presents an interesting proposition with the way the defense is going to play there, because obviously you want to be able to pin your ears back on a 3rd and 8, but you could almost
Contain.
tell Xavier Thomas to pass rush, but not go for the big wraparound pass rush, like use his speed.
Contain
He
your
goes
lanes.
Back there, he's
Yeah.
gone. So if he can just stay in front of his guy and trust those guys on the back end, and let's say it's a blitz where they're sending Barrett Carter in the middle, then he's going to be able to put the pressure there and make sure that XT and Maskell, for example, are there to make sure to keep that contained. But I think it'll be interesting to see how Wes Goodwin plays those 3rd downs, because, as you said, you don't want to get burnt for a 20-yard run. So do you want to put the trust on the back end of your defense to cover for 5 or 6 seconds and put that faith that you can get that stop?
I think that's what you do, because we don't. There's skill players. There's nobody that scares me really, other than the tight end. And I think that's that's got to be a key to this game. And if you're Wes Goodwin, I think you were right. That's what you do. You're like, hey guys, let's cover on the back end. Let's force them to make plays at wide receiver and in the passing game, instead of letting that quarterback just kill us with his legs.
All right, Will, what's your key?
Yeah, on the offensive side, look, this is what Mike Elko, first of all, this guy, they run the 4-2-5, and they run it the whole game for the most part. It doesn't matter who they play. This is pretty much his scheme, his base defense, and he's going to stand guys up. Like, you're going to see defensive tackles standing up over the center. You're going to see defensive ends, you're not knowing where they're going. Are they playing Mike? Who's the Mike linebacker? Who's playing defensive end? So he does all that to confuse the quarterback. But the number one goal is he wants to stop the run, and he wants to with Clemson, he's going to put 8 in the box, and he's going to dare Clemson to beat him with the pass. So for me, the key is for Clemson not to go away from the running game, because when you see those numbers and you see what it looks like, Streeter did this last year too much, and Tony Elliott was guilty of it too in his final years as OC. They would see those numbers and they get so excited and they want to throw the ball. And it's okay, cool, but let's let those receivers let's see what those receivers could do first before we rely on them. I think Clemson needs to stick to the running game, because I still think they could run the ball on Duke, because Duke doesn't have the size to match with that offensive line. And I think Clemson can still pound the football and run it. So don't go away from the running game. Feed Will Shipley the rock. If that's what he learned from the South Carolina game last year, is feed that guy. Don't go away from him. Stick to the running game. I think they'll be fine.
All right, so you're going with the dirt raid.
Dirt raid, man. Let's go.
Dirt raid. That's a new term this year. All right, my key to the game is going to be get a quick start. First quarter, I think, is going to be huge. Clemson's got all this hype, all this excitement, new offense, this, that, and the other. confidence. Talking about not just, hey, let's beat Duke, let's win the national championship. So I think it's going to be important for Clemson to get off to an early start, a good start, keep that confidence level up. Well, we've been to games at Duke before where Duke had no fans in the stands. They were playing well, hanging in there with Clemson. Then all of a sudden, second half, you see all these Duke students and fans start showing up.
Yeah.
Don't expect that to be the case Monday night, but I think it's important for Clemson to get off to a good start and kind of keep that confidence going.
And there'll be a lot of orange in the stadium.
Well,
we know
that was
that.
going to be one of my questions: is will there be more Duke blue in the stadium or orange? Previous years, it's always been
More orange.
More orange. I think Duke's programs
Half and half.
trying a little more exciting. So
It'll be like Wake Forest last year.
I don't think Clemson will have more fans there, but they'll have their normal, really good crowd.
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot like Wake Forest was last year, where you saw there was a, Wake Forest, that stadium holds the 40,000 at that, and so I think you saw like almost 20,000 Clemson fans. It was almost half and half, so it'll be somewhere of that nature, I think. So.
All right, now we're going to go on the limb. We're going to give you our first predictions. Hopefully, we have an offense to get back to giving some better predictions.
I'm interested to see your prediction. That's what I mean, because what you were telling us before we got going, I'm interested to see.
I think the fans can probably guess. But
Yeah, I got a feeling.
Cameron, we're going to let you go first.
Okay,
What's your score prediction?
Okay, so don't jump off the rails immediately when I say it, but I'm going to go 31-24.
That's it. I'm not done.
Okay. No. So it's a touchdown game, so you're like, oh, well, but I think Clemson gets off to that quick start you were talking about. I think they have a strong performance, but as we've said, like, you have to respect this Duke team and what Riley Leonard can do in that offense. And I think they make sure they get it. They make it a nail biter late, and they put some pressure on, but I think Clemson's able to run the clock out late. Maybe it'll be like a 31-17 in the third or fourth quarter, and then the Blue Devils come knocking back on the door, but Clemson's able to make sure they shut it down. But no, I think you have to respect this Duke team, and that's why I'm keeping it a touchdown game.
You haven't been to games with me before, but if it's a 7-point game, this guy's going to be miserable.
I've warned him. He's been warned.
Oh, I
Miserable. All right, Will, tell me you're going to pick Clemson to win by more than 7.
Yes, I'm going to pick Clemson to win by more than 7, but I do believe they don't cover. So the line is, as of today, is 13 points, 12.5, depending on what you're looking at. That to me, at 12, that's a difficult line because, again, I think Duke's a pretty darn good football team. They won 9 games last year, and they average over 30 points a game, so they got a pretty good offense. They're bringing most of those guys back, so they're going to be challenged for Clemson's defense. On the other side, I just think they're going to be better. I mean, man, you look at what Mike Elko did in 1 year. He took them from being the worst defense in the ACC to being average in one season and really increased their sacks from hardly nothing. Went they were again in the middle of the pack and getting pressure to the quarterback. So I think, you got to respect what he's done and what, like you said, Riley Leonard as a quarterback and his playmaking ability. With that said, though, I think Clemson's going to score 30 points. I think they'll get there around that 30 mark. Could score more. I wouldn't be surprised. And I think, Duke, like you said, gets a score late, kind of makes it look a little closer than maybe it was. So I'm thinking, maybe it's 30-13 late, and they get a touchdown, make it 30-20. So I'm gonna go 30-20 Clemson. A backdoor cover for Duke, if you will.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at least we got both wins.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go a little higher than that. I know that's shocking to the fans that have followed TCI over the years. I'm not going to go as high as I would 2 years ago, but I think this team is going to be one of the best Clemson's had under Dabo.
How about that?
I think the defense will definitely be one of the best. I'm hopeful, I guess, on the offensive side with Cade.
Because we haven't seen it.
The weapons and the new, I'm really excited about what Riley could do. Some of the stuff we've heard in camp. So I think the offense is going to score some points. I think the Tigers are going to win this one easily. I'm going to go Clemson 42, Duke 17.
Okay, it's not as bad as I thought you were going to do. I thought you were going to go.
Trust me, I thought about going higher.
He was already going to go a 50
I thought he was going to throw a 50 burger on
I
us.
thought about going a 50 burger, but I'm not. And the reason I didn't is because it's game 1.
Yeah.
Game 1, you're going to have some mistakes.
Correct.
Right? First
Yeah,
time
absolutely.
You're playing, there's going to be some mistakes on both sides. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully we're coming back here next week and we're like, oh my gosh, we were all wrong. Clemson, won by 30.
Scored 63 points on
Yeah,
them.
that'd be great.
South Carolina fans hate when I bring that
hopefully
number
we
up.
can make the walk from the field all the way to the locker room where they do the post game. Dabo's talked a lot about that this week. Got a little flack for that, I think. But
For no reason.
It's true. It is a hike. It's kind of like, you see it some
Oh my gosh, dude, it's a horrible hike.
other places.
It's a hike for us, remember, because I don't know if this year will be the same, but remember we had to do our media. We had to leave the press box and go down there. So we had to do the hike too. So Dabo's telling the truth. It is a walk.
Yeah, it's a good bit of a hike, but it is. I mean, it's a beautiful campus, beautiful place to visit, and hopefully Clemson fans have a good weekend. Hopefully Clemson offense lives up to the hype, and the good news is we'll be there. Bart will be there. We got the best photographer in the state will be there for us, and we'll have everything covered for you guys all Monday night, Tuesday, aftermath. Quick turnaround next week as we get ready for game 2. But I appreciate you guys staying tuned to the Clemson Insider. Make sure you check out our new message board if you haven't. Very new look, much better on mobile, much better on iPad, other devices. So check that out. We'll have a lot of, if you're not at the game, you can go on there and have some good discussions with your fellow Clemson fans. But thanks for checking us out. Stay tuned to the Clemson Insider for the most complete coverage of Clemson athletics.